Hey guys, this is Chris from DSX Machina, and usually I reserve this channel for stuff related to gaming, but as you might have noticed, on occasion I do talk about stuff relating to pop culture and media, specifically the Alien franchise, which I'm a fan of. For people who don't know, I created an Alien RPG homebrew back in the 90s called Alien Fusion, and that was kind of the beginning of my game writing aspirations, which eventually led up to a legit career in 2008 or so. And I have been outspoken. A lot of people consider me a bit of an authority on the franchise. There are a lot of people who know more. I've actually had conversations with people who are authorities, and it's great to engage with them at that level and talk about my nerd, bona fides. Yes, I admit I have not really read the Alien novels, but I have read all of the scripts and all the movies and now all the episodes of the TV show, and of course I read all the Dark Horse comics as well, and and I know quite a bit about the series, and I have a very passionate opinion. So we're talking about the Alien Earth series that finally finished last week, a week ago from today, from the posting of this video, and I admitted that I'm actually a big fan of some of the recent attempts with this franchise. I actually love Prometheus. I'm I guess, one of the few people who love Prometheus. I liked what it was trying to do, and we'll get into details of why I liked it. I did not care for Covenant. It is not growing on me. I still have numerous issues with it, and I know a lot of the kind of fanatical fan base kind of is in agreement to that, and they have reasons which I've also sided with. But I do like Romulus. Um, and I had a few issues with it, primarily the very jarring callbacks. And then we get to Alien Earth, which has a few callbacks, but not very many. Did I like Alien Earth? I have to admit, ultimately, I found the series a little disappointing, probably because of the hype that it was this extremely well made series by this acclaimed creator who has a heck of a resume behind him. And I think that I still love aspects of this series, and I really love some aspects to it, but I found the last few episodes very a little undercooked, and I found the resolution and or lack of resolution very disappointing. Comes down to what the series is trying to be, and that is it's really more interested in the synthetic and artificial intelligence angle of the series. It's not actually very interested in the aliens. And I do believe it does not just the xenomorph, but any aliens in general. It seems to be more interested in the artificial intelligence aspect, and I don't believe it's doing a particularly good job even with that angle. Now, I did love the show as it started, and it peaks with that great flashback episode that shows what happened on the Maginot before it crashed. But I have numerous issues, and it comes down to preconceived ideas of how I think this franchise should be told. And it comes down to one simple fact, that is the xenomorph is not scary. It has not been scary for about 30 years. And that's one thing I liked about Prometheus. It made a point of trying to make this setting and this even though once again people are going to say, well, wasn't Prometheus not part of the Alien series originally? You are correct, and I've mentioned that. But I like the fact that they tried to put the fear back in this style of storytelling, and to do that, you had to take the alien out of that and go back to the unknown, and that's what Alien was. What made Aliens, and Prometheus scary was the unknown. It's that aspect of cosmic horror that I love the most, which is the unknown, the undefined makes it scary, and that's why I don't find you talk about Cthulhu mythos. Is that that's that's cosmic horror. I go, yeah, but it's not scary because we know everything about Cthulhu. It's the complete unknown. It's the giant question marks, and that's what made the first Alien so terrifying. You really didn't know what was going to happen next. Aliens built upon that, and Prometheus built upon that. What I didn't like about Covenant was the fact that they were explaining things, or trying to explain, and were implying in some way that the xenomorph was just the mad machinations of a synthetic that didn't get his daddy's approval, and that is just not interesting to me. And one thing I love about the extended lore and the fan theories that have, I wish producers would take heed because they're trying to inject that fear back into the series. I love the theories going around that the engineers didn't actually create the Prometheus fire pathogen, that they are just harnessing it, and they became victims of it just like everybody else is. Like this pathogen, this undefined chaos goo, is this manifestation of cosmic horror that you can't really explain, or you can't really control it, and ultimately will destroy you. And one thing I liked when I started rewatching Alien 3, because my wife started getting into the series for reasons which even confound me even today, that Alien 3 is the ultimate climax of this cosmic horror. No matter if you are exposed to this alien manifestation, you cannot survive it. It's going to take you, it's going to take everyone you care about, and it's going to take the civilization if they try to control it. And that's always been the aspect of the series. You cannot control it. You cannot tame it. It is chaos. It is something that it cannot be explained. And we got that in the first 3 Alien movies. We even got that to an extent in Alien 4, although it didn't do it as well. And then we got that very much in Prometheus. And then they tried to play with it again in Romulus, which is the reason why I like Romulus, because it tried to pull that in and put that chaos back into that setting. And my biggest issue with Alien Earth is that it tried to take all of that back out. And right by the end of it, oh, by the way, there's going to be some spoilers I'm going to talk about here, but this whole series is now available. It's been on the air for a week. The last episode aired a week ago. Please go out and watch it if you really want, if you don't want spoilers. But by halfway through this season, Wendy, the main character, is communicating with the xenomorph. Not only is she communicating with it, she ends up influencing and eventually controlling its behavior, telling it what to kill and what not to kill. It was a puppet to her. And that removed any lingering threat that something that wasn't really scary to begin with had left. And so as a result, I really, really got turned off by the idea of making these creatures pets to be controlled, because it was clear that the creator of this series had no interest in this franchise. He had to throw in the alien, but he was interested in the artificial intelligence aspect. And I was just like, then you could have made an original series that dealt with artificial intelligence without dealing with the alien. Now, there were some aspects of the setting I really loved. And the one thing I did enjoy was the basic premise. This ship called the Maginot goes off on a 65-year journey to go to distant worlds and find dangerous local flora and fauna in order to bring back, in order to give Weyland-Yutani an edge over its rivals. And I really thought that was a great premise. But by the end of halfway through the season, especially we got into the last 2 episodes of the show, it became clear to me that that was the only interesting aspect of the series for me. I wished, and if I was a person, I was in charge of this series, I would have made the series about the Maginot in its entirety. I would have had the story, the 65-year journey of this vessel going to planets, seeing like basically little tiny versions of the first movie, except now we're dealing with completely unique new aliens, and then the xenomorph is part of that. And then the season would end with it crashing on Earth, and then we can develop something new with these other characters. The fact that the Maginot plotline is just the setup got me interested, going, and now we're going to see all this other stuff, and then we didn't. It focused so much on Wendy and the Lost Boys, which, as the story went on, they became the least interesting aspect of the series for me, because at the end of the day, we are following children in adult bodies, but they are children being written as children, and I generally don't find stories where the main characters are children terribly interesting, because they end up doing things that are sensible for children, but as adults we're kind of like, I wish an adult was in charge. And we have adults with the Oliphant's character, um, and the Captain of the Maginot and these characters, and those people were interesting, but they weren't the center point. As a result, we weren't focused a lot on them. So when the character of Kirsch was on screen, I was incredibly engaged. But the moment the Lost Boys, any of them, would ever become center stage, I started to lose interest, and I became more and more frustrated with the story because it was focusing so much on them and their actions. And I got very jaded with the series, as it was clear it wanted to focus entirely on them, and then it didn't really explore the aspects of artificial intelligence like the story was promising. It was just their children in adult robot bodies. Look at them cook, and it didn't really push the envelope in that genre of artificial intelligence. I was predicting in episode 1. I said there's going to be a revelation where it's going to be exposed that these kids are not transferred, that they are in fact just copies, that their originals are dead, and all they are is just a simulation of these original children. I was expecting that to drop, and the fact that that didn't drop, and I'm thinking, are they still trying to push the idea that you can move a consciousness without copying it? I mean, yes, it was done really well in the video game Soma, but it was done so well, just like, guys, that's untapped material. No one's done that in a TV series or in a movie capacity. The idea of copying your consciousness and suddenly there's a robot version of you. Been done in comics, been done in Soma, but it would have been a nice plot point to have used here to add that a bit of additional existentialism, which has always been part of this Alien series. But like I said, Wendy very easily being able to communicate. Like, there's not even an implication. Just like one episode, she's not communicating. In the second episode, suddenly she's communicating. And by the end of the series, she's completely controlling them. And it guts. I mean, yeah, I already had issues with them choosing to put the alien in a suit. Now, yeah, the alien was in a suit and has been in a suit for a very long time. But when you put it in such broad daylight, it sucks that fear out of it. And I really was interested in it at the beginning, because when you first see the alien, when it goes through the Eat the Rich scene in, I think, episode 2, I was on board. But then it got a bit, and this is a weird thing to say, too powerful. And this comes into something that has been bothering me, that there has been this push by Ridley Scott, specifically pushing this agenda of late, by trying to dismiss Cameron's aliens. And I have said this in other videos and in interviews, Ridley Scott should not be in charge of this franchise. He does not have his best interest at heart. He has his own agenda he wants to push with Ancient Aliens. And although he's a great director, it's very, very clear that he should not be in charge of this franchise. And I've said that, and I'll push it. And I think, and he has stated recently that he did not care for what James Cameron did with Aliens. He defined them too much. And although I think that's a valid point, he defined them too much, but he's been trying to almost push that out. And one of the ways he's doing it by making the alien so powerful that he can take on an army without being killed. And obviously we've seen in Aliens that's not possible. A colonial marine with a pulse rifle can kill an alien. But in this series, one alien will take on an army, because everyone apparently is such a badly trained officer, soldier, or mercenary that they can't get a beat on this thing, even in the open. And I have to admit, there's a part I have an issue with that. I also have an issue with people who are smart that end up doing stupid things. And this brings up a film which everybody loves but me, a film called Ex Machina. And Ex Machina is a film about a guy who creates an android and then brings one of his employees to his estate. And I didn't care for the film because in order for you to get to the climax that the writer-director insisted the film get to, you had to make all the other characters, who have been super smart until then, incredibly stupid. Um, Basically, that if you are going to create artificial life, if you're not going to throw in numerous fail safes to protect you, it feels really foolish. Ex Machina did it, and it really turned me off of the movie. And this series started to do it near the end, where seemingly nothing, like of course they're going to lose containment and so forth, but how they did it, the fact that, and people will say, well, it was Kirsch. He was the one that was supposed to be in charge, and he let them run rampant and do things, and it's never explained why. And there's a lot of conversation that people probably will explain to me about how this boy genius is not as smart as he believes. His arrogance, his egotism, kind of, is the reason why this ending kind of self-destructs in its way. But for me, I was getting more and more frustrated by it's like, oh, a simple failsafe could easily have fixed this. And with the alien, it feels like, and the synthetics, it seems like they're not, obviously these people deserve all this happening to them because they're so dumb that they can't figure out how to put fail safes. If you're going to give children the power of a superhero and not put fail safes in them, it feels really foolish. And then, of course, like I said, the alien itself gets neutered very, very quickly in the series. What got me to stay engaged was a lot of the other aspects of the series. It's very well made. And once again, Timothy Olyphant just brings his A game, and his portrayal and his character kind of steals the show. And I was also interested in the other aliens that we have that pop up. The eyeball, TCOcelis, it's the alien that I wanted because it was scary. You didn't know what it was doing. I loved the development of it, and every time it was on screen, I started to feel fear. There was legit fear, and that's why the episode that was a flashback on the Majno was so fascinating. And then they had these other aliens, 5 other aliens, of which we only really see the eyeball. None of the other ones get a bit of coverage. It's too bad because that hanging plant, we kind of see and they have the potential, and in the end, it's just another, man-eater. And I got really frustrated by that. It's just like there are so many interesting alien designs that you could play with. You could go into Giger's old designs and start pulling out other things that are weird and do really horrible things to the human body, and to have one that just says, oh, it just eats you, or it just draws your blood, or it expels gas that kills you. And I'm like, really? That's the best you can come up with? You have a whole series to develop these 5 other alien species, and the only one that's interesting is the eyeball. You have all this other potential that you could play with, and it seems like they weren't interesting. And it seems like it was Ocellus, the alien, and then it was entirely the synthetic storyline, which was becoming increasingly frustrating to me to watch. Now, this seems like I'm being really, really critical. I did ultimately enjoy the experience, and I'm looking forward to seeing a season 2. But if they come down and says there's no season 2, I wouldn't be terribly shocked, because I feel that they, it feels like the creator doesn't fully understand why the fans of the Alien series love it so much. He just wants to play in that sandbox and do whatever he wants to do with it without really being responsible to the fans. And a lot of people will say that he's not obligated to appease fans. And I think, well, no. I think if you're in a franchise, you're writing for a franchise, you have an obligation to understand and appreciate the value of that franchise and what the fans enjoy out of that franchise. Otherwise, you're just doing Highlander 2. And he's like, oh, we're going on a different direction. Like, yeah, and you've alienated every single fan that you've had because you've done something incredibly stupid. So I found that the last 2 or 3 episodes, despite having tense moments and having some brilliant ideas, I ultimately found the series disappointing because it focused so much on these synthetics, and then and so like we're basically following children. And I don't watch series. I mean, I watch Star Trek Prodigy, and which I love. It's a great series, and those characters are written at the same ages, give or take, as the characters in Alien Earth. They are written to be the same ages, and the Prodigy characters feel more authentic. They still act like children, and yet they are also still more intelligent. And there can be a conversation about what one's more realistic. But from my perspective, I had no problem watching Prodigy, even when the characters were acting childish. I found the characters in Alien Earth frustrating to follow because of the decisions that they were constantly making. And to have them kind of rebel, you're like, well, you should have seen that coming. And the fact that they didn't really put any fail safes just shows you how short-sighted everybody else is. And someone will say, well, that's the point. I go, it doesn't mean I have to go along with it. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it. Just because, yes. And the funny thing is, we get the same thing with the Maginot Crew. The Maginot Crew are incredibly stupid at times. But for some reason, I accepted the justification for that more so than children doing childish things and being incredibly stupid and propelling the chaos that follows. And then there not being something to kind of put them in check. And by the end of the series, we're still not 100% sure where Kirsch's motivations are. And at the end of the story, all the adults are all basically in a prison cell. And even the way when the kids are locked in, and there's a line of going, I hope they don't figure out that they can get out anytime they want. Well, it's like, you know that they can. And it's just like the machinations, the very artificial plot contrivances I had to put in to get that ending the way it was very, very disappointing. And I won't say it ruined the series for me, but I was really into this show. And then after the last episode, as I started to go back and reanalyze the previous episodes, I started to see the problems that I was trying to look past. I wished these aliens were more interesting. I wished the alien wasn't just another puppet to be controlled. I wish these synthetics were more intelligent than they ended up becoming, as dumb as they ended up being. And so that's kind of ultimately I give it probably a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I just didn't think, and I'm worried about the next season because now we've removed all the agency out of the alien. The xenomorph is not scary. It's under control. It's not all the cosmic terror that was kind of being implied with Romulus, Prometheus, and the first 3 Alien films have now been sucked out of the series. And I feel it's going to be focused more on the synthetics. And I hate to be the one to say it, but the synthetics are not as interesting as the writers and the creators seem. The only person that he had an idea how to write these synthetics properly was once again going back to Romulus. I felt that Romulus was the character David wasn't David. What was it? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. I thought he was probably the best written synthetic character I've seen in a while. Didn't really care for making synthetics front and center. I think that at the end of the day, they're just androids. And we have had android characters and android stories for a century. And when you strip the Alien series out of it and you get the synthetics on their own, the writers are not doing anything interesting with them that other writers haven't been doing with synthetics and androids for the last 60, 70 years. So, like, just because you're in the Alien series doesn't automatically make you more interesting. So that's it. I talked about a bit this too long. I wanted to go for 20 minutes, and now we're at 25. So, anyway, that's my opinion on it. It's not a bad show. I think it's painfully frustrating because of the potential in the early episodes, especially peaking with the Maginot, and then seeing it kind of fall off a cliff in the last 2 or 3 episodes, which is really disappointing. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I know I'll probably get a lot of hate, but that's just generally what happens with this. I apologize for my rant. That's because with someone with ADHD, that's how someone with ADHD rants. They'll bounce around and they'll repeat themselves numerously. But yeah, there you go. This has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina. Thank you for listening.